get very soon to the question and answer. I just have 3 very quick comments that came out of the discussion that I would like to maybe just point out my own view on it. And I'm sure you realize that we are not dictating you the only right way of writing a research proposal. You know, there is no only right way around here, but use something that works, that can help you if you don't have your own way that works. Okay, so if you have a way that works, and it's good to listen to other ways that work, but I mean, this is a suggestion, a valid suggestion that works, and we are introducing it in this way. So I want to maybe comment on these stages, for example. The stages, of course, they are clearly following each other, but sometimes they are interchangeable, you know. It's not like, okay, I finish combining text and approach, وبعد كده I go to preliminary research, and then I go to expanded reading. Sometimes when I'm doing expanded reading, as Dr. Walid has pointed out, I'm still combining text and methodology. So it's, I'm sure you realize that already. It's not something that neatly cut. There is always a balance, as Dr. Walid has said, between reading too much and reading too little. And this balance we will observe in other stages as well when we start looking at, in the next session, the elements of the proposal, because some elements overlap. Like, for example, I'm doing questions of the research overlap with aims of the research. You know, the introduction overlaps with the abstract. So I have to keep in mind the overlapping all the time, and this is a balancing act that we will have to be looking at. But when Dr. Walid mentioned balancing reading too much, reading too little, this also reminded me that the process of proposal writing needs a lot of balancing power, you know. A point that was raised by Dr. Salwa is that you don't approach your topic with preconceived ideas, and I mean, you don't think that your ideas are tested and they are proven right already. Otherwise, it's a blasphemy, as she pointed out. But your ideas are, they are your assumptions. So it's okay to have assumptions. It's okay to have assumptions, but subject to testing, right? It's okay to have an assumption that maybe Virginia Woolf was not a feminist after all. Maybe she was a male chauvinist. Okay? This is my idea. This is what I felt, for example, from reading Virginia Woolf, or that Mahmoud Darwish is a Zionist. Okay, this is my preconceived idea. It's okay to have a preconceived idea like that, but I should test. Okay, so I enter the research with a preconceived idea, but not that this is already proven, right? I might want to do a deconstructive reading of Mahmoud Darwish and really prove him a Zionist, and if I can do it, fine. Okay, because we know that there is no truth and lack of truth in literature. Maybe in the empirical sciences, maybe even in linguistics, there is.
But okay, for a second, but
okay, sure.
There's logic. To be logical. I mean, yes, of course, Zionists are really
I actually, well, it depends on where are the limits of logic. But it reminds me of Foucault's madness. But I actually came across a published thesis where the student was reading Mahmoud Darwish as a Zionist, and it's published in Beirut. I mean, it's done with the supervisor, an Arab supervisor, and a very Palestinian sympathizing professor. And the student is Palestinian, but he has written a deconstructive reading of Mahmoud Darwish and proven him a Zionist. So I don't know. Well, anyway, I'm sure nobody of us is going to do that. But the idea is the point is we have our assumptions. And it's okay to have our assumptions.
Yes.
Okay?
What I call a non-hypothesis is is when you have these assumptions, but you surrender to your approach, and the approach says, no, your assumptions were not correct, so you come out with a null hypothesis. All right, this is legitimate, but to come out, to come to research with preconceived ideas that you want to prove correct, this is not legitimate.
You want to force. Like
yes,
you want to
yes,
force.
that's it. And a lot of people do that.
Of course.
A lot of people.
Of course, you cannot do that. You cannot do that.
They force the approach.
I mean, even if the approach does not work, you act as if it worked. You act as if it worked, you know. You are actually twisting the approach. You are understanding it. You are not understanding it with the given it gives you. You are putting something else on the approach from somewhere else to say that it is working, you know. You have to justify, you know, how things are. The last thing I want to say very quickly is we were giving examples all the time about text and method, text and methodology. Like there is, I'm reading Othello with a post-colonial reading. Some of you are not working with texts at all. Some people are working on criticism. Okay, you are not reading a text. You are dealing with post-structuralism. Meaning in post-structuralism, the place of the author in deconstruction. You know, so you're not working with the text. So some of our examples might not be compatible, but the methods explained by Dr. Walid are the same. So if you have, he talked to you about how to combine a corpus with an approach. So if I'm not really using a text, I'm still using a corpus, which is my literary theory. So this is my corpus. I need an approach to approach my literary theory. So I am dealing, for example, with meaning. Okay, so I'm dealing with meaning, let's say, in post-structuralism, in the new criticism, and in, let's say, stylistics or whatever. So I have I have three or two. Let's say I'm dealing with the production of meaning or the place of the author in the new criticism and in post-structuralism. Right? So this is my corpus. But what am I doing? I have a framework, which is the comparative study of the author, the place of the author. What are my tools in this comparative study? My tools will be derived from the two schools that I'm using. When I study the author, I will study the author in how it was approached in the new criticism, and I will study the author in how it was approached in post-structuralism. So they are my corpus and they are my methodology at the same time. And that's okay, because in this case I don't have a literary text to deal with, or I don't have a corpus. I just need them to intervene with these comments, and then we open the floor for questions. We don't have time, we have 8 minutes.
Looks like we can introduce a text while we are speaking about the text, but we can just relate the text briefly. We can speak about the text briefly and just focus on the theory of the criticism. I don't think that we can just avoid any text while we are speaking about it.
It will be one of your tools in this case, yeah, but it's not going to be a corpus that you are in.
In a very brief way, we cannot just exclude the text.
You can, but you don't have to. I mean, you can exclude texts, but you can use texts. And if you use them, they are not as central. You know, the central is the theory, and the text is a sort of a tool you bring on to justify something or to illustrate a point.
I'm glad actually that some of the comments here address a question that I intended to ask, and let's say it's a joint kind of question. Since sources and methodology are the two most problematic stages or things that limits most of us in doing our research, so I would like to know that what's the approach that gives me as a researcher
about resources. We will talk more in the final session about ways of identifying, of finding basically material. I mean, but I want you to remember that you're living at a totally different time than when Dr. Randa and I started doing our MAs. You know, then it was the library, a colleague traveling abroad, or the deep blue sea. You know, there was nothing else. And now you have JSTOR, you have Questia, you have all those search engines online, you have e-books. Right. Yes, you spend more sometimes, but you can get it. So we'll talk about certain considerations related to this later. Now, clashing with academia, in what sense? Just explain that. And I don't understand that question about freedom. You said an approach that allows you the maximum flexibility and freedom.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I was saying maybe idea that we have has pointed out. It's like I don't want to be a follower to the method. I don't want to be chained by the method all the time. If I'm analyzing something, where's my seating or where do I stop? I like to know. It's not I'm not disagreeing. I would like to know.
This is the same question about clashing with academia.
It's where do I stand as a contributor?
Where's your limit?
Yeah.
That's what you're asking?
Yeah.
I believe there's none. I mean, I believe as long as I'm logical about my approach, as long as I'm aware of my tools and I'm applying them, I can come up with any conclusion I want that is logical. That is proof. I mean, when you come to this department in the first year, I mean, when I came here, the first thing I was told is nothing is right, nothing is wrong, which is what Dr. Randa was trying to say, and which we all take for granted. I mean, there is no one correct answer. There is a hypothesis that is tested. I've tested it logically. I have proved something completely new, including that Mahmoud Ali is a scientist.
But after he died, I mean,
still alive. I don't think there is a logic. You know, I cannot say Batir Lomo Asfar and say this is my hypothesis and I'm going to use those tools, I'm going to inject some yellow liquid into my batika and prove that this Asfar. This is not research. I mean, I have to approach my topic logically with logical tools and prove anything. You know, it contradicts something that someone else has said. Fine. This is how this is how research develops. You know, this is how all new schools came into existence because someone saw something new that no one else did before.
There's a question that needs to be asked at this stage. What degree of novelty is required at the level of MA research compared to a PhD research, of course? I mean, does it really need to be new, or what is new about an MA research that is different from a PhD? Because most of the people who register for an MA would look forward to a PhD, so they have to know the difference between the two. So, how new is an MA really?
Yes,
Yes, I just want to add to Dr. Salwa's question. So, because you're saying that at some point, if I discover that some aspects of my approach don't apply to my text, then I might choose to be eclectic and use other schools as well. So I was thinking, does this come at the level of an MA research, or would it be okay to just use the aspects that apply if the approach is new and stay with it for an MA research?
Now, what I was taught, and a lot of us are taught, It's an MA is an exercise in academic research. A PhD is where you really should be in control of your material and contribute something. Now, there are no set rules. You know, I mean, in an MA, yes, you're not, the expectations are not the same. I mean, as an MA student, you're not expected to produce something that is on the same par with someone who's working on a PhD. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the two. You know, you only have an MA or a PhD, and that's that. But it's your first piece of extended research. You're learning a lot about integrating methodology, about how to actually conduct research. You're not really required to come up with something extremely innovative, but, I mean, a new topic. Two texts that have not been approached together, applying a new method to a text. I mean, on PhD level, you should come up with more findings. You know, I mean, this is now you are more in control of your scholarly work. If this is your career, you're preparing to publish more, to contribute more to academia at large. You know, not just to get a degree. As a student, how do I know if this is new enough? I mean, you don't. Basically, that's why you have an advisor. This is why other people read. This is why you have a seminar with a proposal. This is why people react to your proposal. And of course, don't take any of this personally. I mean, it's a learning process. You know, I walk into the seminar and someone tells me that my approach simply doesn't work for my text. It's not because they are antagonizing me personally. It's not because they dislike me. They're trying to help me. But they have more experience, and they have read much more, and they have written much more. Does that give them monopoly on research? No, it doesn't. Can I contradict? Yes, you can. But be logical about it.
Okay, just one thing about the novelty. I think novelty and innovation are something, or are one thing, and contribution is another. So your topic must be new. New in the sense that it has not been done before, okay? But it could be similar to things that have been done before. Yani, for example, had the Ara Jane Austen as a feminist, and you are reading Emily Bronte as a feminist, okay? This is a similar topic. So it's not terribly new because it's in a trend. It's within a trend that is already established. Reading Victorian novelists as feminists. So it is new, but it is not terribly new. It's not groundbreaking. And that's why it's a little contribution. It's a minor contribution. And in an MA, this is quite all right. Okay? Of course, it has not been done before, but the likes of it have been done before. In a PhD, then I need a contribution, maybe to break new grounds, you know, not to continue on a track that has been established, although this is already okay برضو، لأن مش كل حد هيعمل PhD هيجيب تراك جديد ويدخل يعمله، okay؟ بس the farther you are from established tracks، يعني هقرا مش عارف مين as a feminist، هقرا مش عارف مين as I'm not speaking on feminism, I'm just saying that, you know, it's a track. So the farther you go away from the track, the better. Deal with cultures that have not been dealt with before. مش كله Latin Americans. Okay, deal with Maori literature, and I'm pointing out at her head because she's the first person who's done that in the department. Okay, I mean, go a little bit out of the track.
May I add that, am I interrupted?
No, sure.
Okay. That I think the degree of novelty in an MA research is limited in the sense that you can replicate, but with a new element, replicate an approach, but use new material, or use the same material with a new approach. Or maybe you've read something, an approach applied to some material that you think was applied in the wrong way, and I want to prove, I want to use it in the right way. Will the result be different? And so you apply the same methodology to the same material with the new twist, with correcting what was wrong. Of course, in that case, it means you understand the approach very well, and you know where the researcher went wrong, and you want to put it right. Now, all these are allowed in an MA. Replication is allowed in an MA, but not in a PhD.
Let me just hasten to add that the terminology Dr. Salwa is using has a lot to do with linguistics,
Which is why we're grateful to have her.
results. You know, of course, there are equivalences in literature.
But there are overlaps, you know,
Of course,
between.
but I mean, we discourage students from saying something is right and something is wrong, right? So, I mean, in linguistics, because it's more, because there is a hypothesis, and we'll talk about this more when you write a literature proposal, usually there's no hypothesis. I mean, it's more scientific, I mean, it can be testable. You know, you're applying a certain methodology to a certain number of English as a second language speakers, etc., etc. So the results can depend on factors and variables. So something can go wrong that you can then set right. Just be careful with that when you apply that to literary criticism.
لا ما هو كمان criticism the new schools of criticism are semi scientific يعني.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.